Hey yo, what's up everybody? Not too long ago, I made this video. In it, I asked if you guys would like to see a Sanhua backstory video. Dang. Well, the stars have aligned and your constellations are maxed. Let's get it. In the latest event, it's very interesting that Sanhua is all dressed up and playing the character of Asura in the play. The significance of this performance and the Asura figure in her life is a big part of her backstory, and really just who she is. Her story is also presented in an almost poetic manner. Typically, I like to expand on the story and give more context and information involving other characters and main quest info while just distilling the best parts of what's written. And I will do that here to some degree, but her story is just so enjoyable to me that I'll be presenting a large portion of it just as is. So anyway, who is she? Well, first let's start off with some things we already know. She's an exceptionally hard worker who doesn't often take breaks or time for herself. Sanhua is often just referred to as Magistrate Jinhsi's bodyguard, and that's what she introduces herself as when we first meet her in Jinzhou City Hall. She usually just stands silently behind Jinhsi at a distance, but that day she wasn't. As you know, we came there to meet Jinhsi, but only Sanhua was there. What's interesting about Sanhua and Jinhsi is that while their personalities couldn't be more different, in one way, they're both the same. They both essentially grew up as orphans. Also, before I go any further, please don't forget to click those like and share buttons if you enjoy this type of content. I'm still very much a small creator, and that kind of thing really does help out a ton. Sanhua's hometown was a village on a mountain. It isn't exactly said where this village was located, but wherever it was, they had a strange, intense blizzard, and while at the same time experiencing a wave-worn disaster. This likely caused the blizzard. Tacit discord started pouring out, and within moments, the village was crushed. The anomalous blizzard reshaped itself into a giant, colossal tacit discord that looked just like an Asura statue. What was once her village was now a tacit field, and this colossal beast stood atop the mountain, creating a sight that was described as both awe-inspiring and horrendous. The Midnight Rangers did everything in their power to defeat the colossal beast, and finally it collapsed and disintegrated into piercing roars. When clearing the battlefield, the Rangers were shocked to find a frozen infant in the wreckage, and that infant was the sole survivor of her village. We don't exactly know the name her parents held for her or the name she would go by in her youth, but Sanhua is the name that would be given to her much later in life. Nonetheless, finding this child wasn't merely a solemn moment for the Rangers. Finding her instilled courage in soldiers across the battlefield. People believed this to be a miracle of divine favor, although I'm not sure Sanhua would see it that way. Several days later, the baby girl would open her captivating, odd-colored eyes for the first time. While she survived the destruction of her village, she was not unscathed by the jaws of the lament. It left her right eye corroded. The lingering frequencies reconfigured themselves into a new eye. Though Sanhua was born blind, this allowed her to directly see the frequencies of all things in the world. Later tests would show that her ability to analyze frequencies show a 99.64% accuracy in visualization, basically implying that her vision of the world through frequencies is a near flawless representation. And while we know Sanhua to be a herald of frost, fittingly, her backstory drops some of the coldest lines describing her experience. Unbeknownst to everyone back then, it was also a curse of the lament. The curse distorted everything in her eyes into grotesque, eerie, and cacophonious apparitions, disturbing her senses and shattering her perception of existence in the world. She saw no lies, but neither did she ever see light.
Damn!
So as time goes on, Sanhua would continue to relive that same snowy night in her head, struggling to escape this hell. only to continue being tortured by it until she became an Asura herself. So in a way, she was never truly rescued from the battlefield. Her backstory vividly describes her dreams, and they all pretty much sound like nightmares. In her dreams, she was always lost in endless darkness, searching for a field of snow or a glimmer of light. But in the next instant, she would be lying on the snowy ground, surrounded by twisted monsters. These monsters gnawed at her as she lay among hundreds of shattered corpses. As they gouged out her eyes, darkness descended, and only their flickering shadows remained. And then she would wake up. At times, she thought she had escaped the nightmare, only to realize she was still trapped within and had been transformed into a monster. Because of Sanhua's cold, silent, and reserved demeanor, it was hard for others to imagine that she suffered from these reoccurring nightmares. In her youth, Sanhua struggled to keep her forte under control, and her body always emitted an unconscious, chilling coldness that repelled others around her. As she grew older, her forte became increasingly powerful. The resting demon lurked within her, urging her to follow TD's instinctive hunger and consume frequencies. The power of snow became harder for her to contain, and even the frequencies between TDs and humans became even more challenging to distinguish. From her resonance examination report, we know that overclocking isn't a rare occurrence for her, and because of all of this, Sanhua embarked upon a self-imposed exile. Sanhua traversed various places during her exile. She journeyed to remote mountainous plains, gazing over desolate, uncharted expanse of cliff. And while traversing to all these places, she witnessed these star-shaped fissures spread across the land, the tacit marks, from which tacit discords continuously hatched, aka tacit fields. They corroded the land that humanity relies on for survival, like how they once corroded her eyes. She tried to slay the monsters, but found no solace. The never-ending chaos of noise tormented her day and night. Her only motivation was survival, pushing forward despite the constant assault on her senses. She was like a kite floating atop the wilderness, guided by a thin thread that would seem to break at any moment. She let the snow pummel her, lost and directionless. Wherever she roamed, blizzards would ravage everything in their path. She became a calamity. As word of Sanhua's notoriety spread, people came after her. She didn't know who they were or why they were trying to kill her. She somehow realized that she must contain the devil within. But panic always prevailed, and she would always fight before fleeing in distress. However, one day, she was cornered and trapped in the mountains, and it was then that she finally saw the snow, a golden shower of radiant snowflakes, like petals falling from the sky. The sight was mesmerizing. She forgot her dilemma, the pain, everything. She was guided by a magical voice that seemed to calm her mind. And as the blizzard cleared, she found herself surrounded by golden snow, and a man appeared and revealed himself to be the abbot of a temple. At this moment, she realized it was all an illusion meant to enlighten her. It's not clear whether she had sought refuge in the temple or whether the abbot found her. Nonetheless, that's where she ended up. The abbot spoke, saying, "All conditioned phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew or a flash of lightning. Thus one should contemplate them in this way. What you perceive as suffering, yet you do not know that suffering leads to salvation, only with one's karma. May one's cause and outcome arise." Don't worry if you didn't get any of that, because Sanhua didn't either, at least at this moment in time. But she didn't seek to escape from it. She was just happy to be accepted, and no one could have predicted that someone like Sanhua wouldn't be tamed by force, but rather by silent falling flowers and a piece of advice. And speaking of flowers, To this day, one of Sanhua's cherished possessions is a flower encased in ice. It is her physical manifestation of the Buddhist concept called kasana, a moment in time. And as she looks at it, she wonders, is she admiring its fleeting beauty or mourning its inevitable demise? So remember when I said we didn't know what Sanhua was called in her youth? Well, that's because it's here at this temple that she's given the name Sanhua. And at the temple, she practiced and learned Heart's Sutra, as well as swordsmanship with the rest of the monks. And before leaving the temple, Sanhua received a parting gift from the abbot. It's her mala beads, and she carries these everywhere to allow her to calm her mind while reciting the Heart's Sutra and just bring her peace and stability. Sanhua wondered, if karma is behind every fated outcome, then what would her own karma bring her? As her story continues, she's once again seen on the battlefield, where blood and fire intertwined, and she's ready to fight for what was taken from her years ago. They took her eyes and her home when she couldn't fight back. But now, she's on the battlefield as a warrior, with the snow as her curse, as her blade. So after all of this fighting, her eyes started to strain from all the TD frequencies she was taking in, and her ears were filling with deafening screams. Through the blizzard, she saw a horrific sight, and this sight reminded her of her previous nightmare, one she hadn't dreamed in years, where all these hundreds of corpses gathered together to form a giant Asura before her. But upon further inspection, she recognized the faces of those she called companions in this ball of corpses. And at this moment, she felt helpless, like she was trapped in an illusion, watching helplessly as the demon from within her consumed her with vicious force. Her abilities, once a source of power, now controlled and devoured her. The curse that gave her strength now seemed futile against the overwhelming force of the lament. And eventually, Sanhua collapsed in exhaustion. She was overwhelmed by all the monsters and the hallucinations. She muttered quietly to herself as she hit the ground. She lost count of how many injuries she sustained, only feeling warmth slipping away from her. She was back in the nightmare of her childhood, lying once again on that snowfield. Coldness consumed her body as she melted into the icy ground. As the world descended into a state of complete silence and darkness, a fleck of white entered her blurry vision. She questioned whether it was snow. Sanhua reached out, longing to touch that coldness, but her fingertips were greeted with warmth instead. No, it was not a snowflake, as the clear sight of a young woman gradually emerged in her vision. It was a frequency she had never seen before. This was the first person who appeared normal and untwisted in Sanhua's eyes. The young woman stood before Sanhua, shielding her from harm. Lightning seemed to flow at her fingertips. The chaotic blizzard was drawn towards her, and she guided those frequencies, gradually bringing them to stability, like a divine being responding to a child's prayer. She eradicated all of the tacit discords with her lightning-like abilities. The painful screams of the battlefield faded away, and now she heard the blowing wind, chirping birds, and the rejuvenating earth. It was at that moment that she finally broke free from that snowy night, and the once frozen moment in time started to flow again. And that was when Sanhua finally understood what karma had in store for her. The future that Jinhsi demonstrated is precisely where Sanhua's fate lies. She is the light Sanhua has been pursuing in the darkness all this time. Sanhua took up her blade again, transforming her demons into the power for protection. Sanhua wholeheartedly pledged her loyalty to Jinhsi, and she has been tirelessly working towards creating a future they both dream of. One question about Sanhua's perception of Jinhsi is, why is she the first person who appeared normal and untwisted in her eyes? As mentioned before, Sanhua's lament-given vision pretty much sees everything as it is with the exception of humans. Could it be that Jinhsi's power and life is so intricately connected with Jue? We don't have any concrete evidence just yet, but that is a theory. By the way, if you haven't seen this video, I'll talk more about lore and theory of what all this could mean. Also, don't forget to let me know what you guys think about Sanhua's vision and why she sees Jinhsi differently in the comments below. And that's the story of Sanhua, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. Why so mean? I feel you, bruh. This video took me quite a long time to make, mainly because there isn't a lot of footage or story content involving Sanhua, so I had to get kind of creative with the visuals. Also, I ended up re-recording a couple sections because it just didn't pass the vibe check, you know what I mean? So, if you really like the video and respect the effort, please leave a like and share this video. Anyways, that is all I have for you today. And until next time, I'll catch you in the waves. Peace out, y'all.